to a better way, a sustainable approach to dentistry. I am Dr. Reed Winnick, founder of Dentistry for Health New York.
Hi, I'm Tammy Kolschmidt, a dental hygienist, clinical thermographer, and body talk practitioner. And we have a fun show tonight. We have Dr. Niloo Dardashti, who's a psychologist, a coach, also certified in holistic mental health. And she's here tonight to have an open discussion about a documentary she's done on the saga of Twilight. And I believe it's called the Twilight Haze. Is that correct?
Yes, Into the Twilight Haze.
Into the Twilight Haze. So let's just start off by
telling us what Twilight is, because I have no idea.
Okay, give the viewers a background of Twilight in case they have no idea what it is.
Okay, so Twilight is a set of books and movies. The book was originally written by Stephenie Meyer, who dreamt of the story in her sleep one night, and then made into a movie by Summit Productions. And basically a love story about a vampire and a teenage girl who fall in love. And we did a documentary on sort of what was the allure of it, why were so many women across generations, across cultures, so enamored by this film and the books. And it really, I don't think any of it really had to do with the vampire piece, actually.
Yeah.
Most of it was really just about the love story.
It was all about the love story. And I had asked a few of my friends just to see what their take was on it. And it goes back to the fact that he makes her feel like a princess almost. I mean, he's there for her. It's almost unrealistic, the way that he is there for her in every way. And his love is so timeless and deep. And, you know, talking to girls about it, that's what they want out of their relationship. So the question that I
Wait, so do
have...
men. Go on, I'm sorry.
This is true.
Good point.
Good point. But the way that it comes across in the movie, the questions that I had about it were, is it unrealistic to expect our men to raise to that level within a relationship? Like, how can you make it real in a relationship?
Well, I think it's absolutely unrealistic to watch Twilight and think that should emulate your relationship.
Good.
If somebody watched that movie and told you, "Oh, why isn't my husband like Edward?" I mean, you know, Edward he's the sort of emulation of this illusion that we have of a perfect love, right?
Yes.
A perfect other who's going to be perfect in every way.
Right.
Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist in men or women, right?
Yeah.
We're human.
Right.
He wasn't human.
No, he was not human. And
Fact number one, he wasn't human.
yes.
He was a vampire.
Yes. I think that most of the women I spoke to, what they sort of universally agreed upon, and there were themes that came up, they loved, yes, the sense of sort of unconditional acceptance that was there. The validation, the mirroring, this kind of like symbiotic connection between the two characters. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, did she give him the same love that he gave her?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because I keep hearing he gave her, but I was wondering what she was doing.
Good question, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that because most of the fans are women, we're really focusing on what was it that the women loved about it, and therefore what was the man sort of in relation to the woman giving her. So it's not really, you know, our film was about understanding what is it in our sort of universal collective unconscious as women that so many of us are drawn to this, and it's been such a huge phenomenon. I mean, a really huge phenomenon.
Yeah.
And so of course one of the things I like to look at is where do you lie in terms of acceptance of your own self? Mm-hmm. So you long for this person who's all accepting. You long for this person who mirrors you, who validates you. Where do you lie in terms of all of that stuff within yourself? How much of that do you have for yourself? Because that stuff is important in a relationship.
Yeah.
And generally, all of the women loved the fact that there was such a deep sort of mental connection between these two characters.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the longing of women, for women and men, of course. We just happen to speak more to women about this because, again, they're most of the fans. To have this nonverbal, sort of really deep connection that goes beyond just physical, and it is really timeless in a way.
Yeah.
And nothing really is timeless. We know that nothing is permanent.
Right.
Which is another, I think,
That's a
appeal
whole nother
here.
thing.
Yes. That we kind of know on some level that, we all know. We're just, some of us filter it more than others do because it's so crazy to think about that nothing in the world is permanent.
And that's where Edward comes from, because he is permanent. He's a vampire, so he exists eternally, unless something changes. But so he's able to love her in that way, because for him it's permanent. So another thing about women. Now, when we were talking in the back, you had said that there's people who love Twilight, there's people who hate Twilight, or they see it in a different way. Can you explain a little bit about how that could be hurtful to the people who love it, and then they find out?
I mean, I just think it's limiting because a lot of people pathologize the people who love
Yes.
Twilight because they assume that those people expect their others, I use the word other as,
Significant other.
Partner,
Significant
yeah.
other, yeah.
to complete them in some way,
Right.
to fill them up. And yes, if you're watching Twilight and that is ultimately what you're expecting of your other, you're setting yourself up.
It's a
Absolutely.
bit delusional. It's a bit.
Absolutely.
So is it safe to assume if you expect something of your other, first start by giving your other what you're expecting, and then you should get it in return?
Yes,
will
although a
more
lot of-
naturally flow in return.
Good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes. Sometimes, we talked on another show about how sometimes giving too much and receiving, isn't balanced, right? Some people are more givers, some people tend to feel more naturally as receivers. So that gets, tricky a little bit. But that also gets into communicating with your partner, as we were talking about, with what you need from them.
Right, but what if the person who's giving, his gratification is from giving, so he's actually being selfish because he likes to give?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, someone who keeps giving is because he's benefiting from it, because he's enjoying the fact that he's giving. So in essence, he's giving a lot of...
Well, it depends. Is he, in giving, is he forgetting about his own needs entirely? Because it's
No.
good to be giving.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very good to be giving.
Right. But
We're
is he-
talking
is
about
he-
extremes.
Right, but is he giving for the wrong reason? Is he because sure he's giving so the partner receives, but the reality is he's giving because that it makes them feel better.
Yeah, maybe it decreases his own anxiety. Maybe it helps him to feel like he's worthy of love.
And that's a good one.
Yeah.
Worthy of love.
Sure. Maybe he doesn't know any other way of feeling a connection rather than through giving, because he was in a situation growing up where that was the only way that he did get attention, is when he was extremely giving, maybe more than what's normal for a kid. So these are all things certainly to consider.
Right.
But I think insofar as just the allure in general of this film, we're really looking at, as my friend and colleague Dr. Stephen Snyder would say, 4 volumes of foreplay.
I was just going to say, let's talk about the sexual aspect of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a huge piece here in this story of sexual tension, right?
Yeah.
The two characters do not bring their love to fruition until the very, very, very end. So you've got this whole stretch of just wanting and being totally connected in so many ways, but waiting to have that physical connection. And I don't know about you, but I don't hear a lot about that sort of thing happening nowadays.
No,
Right?
and
People kind of jump into it, and there's something to be said about women feeling more okay with their sexuality.
that's right.
Right?
And earlier you brought up the important point that the characters, Edward, correct is his name, if he has sex with her, he'll hurt her. And she's also a teenager, so she's coming in this day and age. You know, it's happening. So that whole tension is very interesting, also.
Yeah, it's different for teenagers and older women. I think teenagers are kind of like, wow, that's so cool. There's that, you know,
They're
mental
waiting.
connection.
Right, but
Yeah.
What a
But isn't that a metaphor? The fact that you say that he'll hurt her by having sex with her, isn't that like a metaphor maybe for what the message they're trying to bring out?
It's deep. It
in the movie?
could be deep.
Well, you know, Stephanie, you know, people talk about the fact that her religion, being a Mormon, has to do with her beliefs about having sex before marriage, etc. I don't want to get too much into that piece of it, but what's interesting is that Edward's character, who is with, you know, in relationship with Bella, the female character, he's 100 years old. So here's a guy from the Victorian era in 2010 or whatever year it is with a
Right.
teenage girl who's expecting to just, you know, have a teenage guy from
Yeah.
2010. And he's chivalrous and he's very worldly and he's very interested in really, really knowing her. And these are things that women long for.
That's right.
They want to be known.
Yeah.
So what does that mean about relationships today? It means, and not just for men to take home for women, but that we really want to feel like our significant other wants to know us. They're really interested in us. Why do you like that?
Yeah. That
Why
there's
do you
a
watch
deeper
that?
connection.
Yeah.
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 That's what that movie, all of it brings, is a deeper connection. And things move so fast. Things are so instantaneous with all of the, you know, the internet and the connections that it's almost lost. We want to just collide and crash and things happen right away, and that doesn't happen in this. And I think it takes women back to a time or a feeling of like maybe that's feels right and that's how it should be. It should be a little slower, a little more. A little more, like you say, a lot more foreplay before the big event.
That mental connection is like foreplay for many women.
It
right?
is.
That's
Sex
not
is
to
mental
say-
anyways, right?
Yes, absolutely. It starts in the brain.
Yeah.
It does. And I think there's also a paradox at play here because, you know, as a woman myself, as a woman who I consider myself to be a strong woman, independent, you know, I like to do a lot of things and you know, I'm generally not your, I'm not good in the kitchen. I'm not, you know, considered a domestic type by
Right.
any means. But you know, I think there is a part of all of us that sort of longs for that surrender in a way, which actually reminds me of what we were talking about, the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon.
Yeah.
Is what is this thing that women are so into? And I mean,
Yeah.
I think as women, we're just taking on so much more these days. We're sort of a lot more, doing a lot more things, in control of a lot more things, taking on different roles than we ever have, and having this sort of fantasy of just being able to let go and surrender. It used to just come naturally that was more of our role.
Yes.
Right?
But
As being more.
Is the theme of 50 Shades of Grey almost the opposite then of this other Twilight movie?
Not so much.
No.
Not so much. I think the paradox that's similar is that we want to be equal. We want to be have equal status and not be looked at differently and not and sort of be able to take on different roles and not be expected to take on a role because we're female. But that there's something about that chivalrous Victorian era character that appeals to us. And I think it's more about the respect and the real sort of time it took to get to know, and really feel like even though we've been better able to tap into our masculine parts, that we can still feel our feminine parts as well.
Right.
In relation to a man.
And that's what Dr. Niloo and I were talking before the show also about this. And I was saying what I had learned about myself was I'm also a very strong, independent woman, you know, focused, almost dominant to some extent, but I have a very male side. And what I realize is that what I need in a man, or what I love about my boyfriend, is he becomes the dominant one in the relationship. And it's a good thing, because if I was the dominant one, I would be pushing him all over the place. And that wouldn't be so healthy for me. It would be too much masculinity for me all the time. So when he comes in and he's the masculine one, it brings me into my feminine. And it allows me to experience the best of both of those worlds. Essentially, it brings balance. And I think on a really deep primal level, that's what we all need. We need balance. We need to know that we are masculine, we're also feminine, and this is for men too. And your partner can hopefully balance that in you. And there's times when I am more of the dominant one in the relationship. It's usually when he's sick and I need him to do something to get well. And then I become dominant, and he is a little bit more feminine because he takes more of that submissive role. But I just think balance is the key. Even in 50 Shades, clearly that's an extreme case of submission and dominance. But as it goes on, you see the dominant one learning about himself, and the submissive one realizing what her boundaries are.
That's true.
What did you learn in your documentary? What's that about your film?
Well, besides everything that we've been discussing, I think one of the things that's really, really interesting, the whole dilemma of, can we sustain passion and stability in a relationship? This is something that people have written about for ages. We've got so many different experts, sex therapists, psychologists talking about this. Stephen Mitchell, Esther Perel, so many people. Those are just two people who I really like their books. And I think that one of the things that I've realized in working with couples, because I work with a lot of couples, is that if there was a formula, if there was something that I could say was, what I would recommend to try to maintain those two things, which are really, really hard to have together. Really, we all struggle with that in long-term relationships, is besides, the baseline chemistry that we really need to have a connection with somebody of the opposite sex or the same sex, we need to have that stability. We need to feel safe. We need to feel like we can be secure and talk and be open and open-hearted and all of that. And one way to increase the other piece, the passion, the excitement, is to really maintain a paradigm of, I am still going to work on challenging this person, challenging this relationship, challenging myself to grow, to challenge them, stimulate them intellectually, sexually, whatever it takes. And adding an element of unpredictability. Most of us know exactly what our partner is going to do when we get home. Be unpredictable tonight. Be unpredictable. Plan to be unpredictable if you have to.
That's right.
But that unpredictability and that challenging and sort of bringing novelty to the table. Novelty is a huge dopamine booster. I mean, dopamine is what is generally activated when we fall in love, right? So we want to increase dopamine.
Yeah.
Novelty is a big dopamine inducer. So we want to do novel things with our partners.
Right. So what would you suggest as a tip? Because when someone starts that whole dating cycle for the first year or so, it's all fresh, it's all new. But then they kind of slide back and things become more, I guess it's mellow, they're used to it. So how would you put in those, what would you use as pointers to make things more exciting, as if it was the first year of dating or the first few weeks? What would you suggest?
What do you do in the first year when you're dating somebody?
Take a shower before you go out?
Oh! Nice. Okay. You're interested in getting to know the person. You make an effort to get to know them.
That's
you
right.
ask them questions. You
I
try to
call
get
it
into their heads.
Small talk.
taking interest.
Okay.
Small talk could be
But
taking
small
interest.
talk is taking interest. 'Cause you're
Yeah.
asking
Oh,
that
good
little-
point. Actually, yes. Asking about those. I thought you were being sarcastic, like.
I'm
saying,
never sarcastic.
the weather. You know.
No, that's not
You're
small talk.
Right.
That's-
Okay.
I know. Yeah. So he means like taking interest in small things about the person.
Exactly.
Details.
There you go. So you see a book lying around that your wife is reading. Normally, you wouldn't even notice that book.
Right.
You might ask her, what's? I saw that book that was there. What's that about? What do you like about it?
It
Yeah.
happens to have been 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, that's a good.
That's a good
that'll
book.
That's
be
a good
for you.
question.
That'll be good for you.
Yeah.
I gotta bring it home.
Yeah, well, so I mean, most of the time somebody will be very surprised, you know, if you do those things. Hopefully
Yeah.
you try to cultivate that kind of stuff. And I actually tell people to create time to sit across from each other, two chairs. My mother-in-law and father-in-law do this, and I think it's amazing. And they just sit across from each other and talk,
Yeah.
you know?
Again-
I mean, how much time do we
Most
create
are.
to do that?
We don't. We're always talking this way
We're
on our little
texting each other.
phones.
Yeah.
But again, there's an abyss sitting across from you, and it's up to you to just ask the right questions and to open up this whole new world. But that takes time. It takes commitment.
We take for granted. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the human condition, right?
Yeah.
So when you ask about what would you do, you cultivate those things that you would do in that first year. You would try to do gestures in that first year.
Yeah.
You would be unpredictable in a way. You would be open to being surprised by that person. You would surprise that person. I don't mean surprise them with gifts. I mean
Behavior.
yeah, doing things that
Yeah.
are different, surprising, let's do this. Or just acting out of the ordinary of what you would normally do, your normal reaction to something, your role.
I have something. This is a little tip. This is something for you guys out there that my boyfriend did for me that just shocked me. I came home from work tired as usual, and walked in, slopped on my bag, sat on the couch, and he came out and he made me a CD. He's like,
Aw.
listen to this music, and it was Van Halen and all these 80s music. I was completely shocked. I thought, wow, what made you give me some 80s music? And he just said, oh, I know that was
He
your
made you
era.
a mix.
Yeah, he made me a mix. It was wonderful. And so now he couldn't believe how much I liked it. So every now and then I get another mix. And it's different eras. Sometimes it'll be a blues mix. You know what I'm
And
saying?
that's something he knows you would appreciate.
Totally.
Right?
And I never asked him to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a behavior change, and it was a surprise.
Yes, and it's got to be something that'll appeal to the other person.
Right.
If you didn't care about music and he was doing that just because he enjoyed doing it,
Yeah.
it'd be different.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to think about how can I tap into and be attuned. Attuned is a very important word that I use with couples a lot,
Okay.
to what they are interested in,
Yeah.
what brings pleasure for them, what makes them feel good and stimulated.
Yep.
Mental stimulation really does lead to other types of stimulation, right? We talked about that.
It-
starts
yeah.
in the brain.
It does. It starts in the mind. You get the mind going. That gets the juices flowing. You get the mind going.
Yes.
So what's the resolution of the movie Twilight, and what do you conclude from it?
Yes, I don't know if there's a resolution per se. I think of it more as an interesting hour of insights into relationships using Twilight as a vehicle, about male-female dynamics and why certain things happen and what we can do, and a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of experts that weigh in, and just some fun and even humorous stuff too. But I think it's really important, just going back to the beginning, not to use it as a way to say you need to be like him or you need to be like her, but sort of what is it about this that's appealing to me so much? So how can I use it to grow in myself?
Right.
And cultivate certain things in myself? Because again, a lot of people also love the escape fantasy, aspect of it.
Yeah.
The escape, living in these mundane sort of routine worlds.
Daily. Yeah. Well, and you can't, you cannot be in a healthy relationship or any relationship until you know yourself and until you're true to yourself. That's like the first excavational dig.
That's true. That's true. So if you're one of the people who really enjoys the escape piece too,
Yeah.
is to find ways of Why am I not feeling that sense of awe, wonder, adventure in my life? How can I manifest that? How can I cultivate that? You know, we tend to lose our sense of wonder that we have naturally as children. Why?
Yeah.
Why should we let go of that just because we turn into adults?
Right.
That's what keeps us going, right?
That's right. So the documentary website again, Doctor? is
www.twilightdocumentary.com.
twilightdocumentary.com, and they can download it right there and watch it, correct?
Right. And do you have a phone number you can give out?
Yes, my office number is 646-789-5113.
And do you deal with relationships? Is that your thing?
Yeah, I work with adults and couples.
What other types of patients do you see besides couples and adults?
Well, besides adults and couples?
Well, no.
Other, what other modalities do you use?
Issues,
Yeah,
yeah.
issues.
I mean,
Not
I work with
relationship
people who have trouble with asserting themselves, people dealing with anxiety, stress, all across the board, really.
And,
Right.
and from a holistic approach, which
Yes,
is one of the
absolutely.
reasons we have Dr. Niloo on, is because she is a different type of psychologist, and we are happy and excited to have known her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I really
You're very
appreciate
welcome. Well, as you've pretty much figured out, tonight's show, besides Edward having horrific teeth as a vampire, has nothing to do with teeth. But we are Dentistry for Health New York. Our website is www.dentistryforhealthnewyork.com. You can always reach us at 212-973-9425.
And please email us more questions, more show topics at reid, R-E-I-D, at dfhny.com.